You mean that's it? Inigo said, appalled. That's it, Max nodded proudly. He had not been up this long a stretch since the old days, and he felt terrific. Valerie was so proud. Beautiful, she said. She turned to Inigo then. You sound so disappointed. What did you think a resurrection pill looked like? Not like a lump of clay the size of an eagle egg. I usually give them a coating of chocolate at the last minute. It makes them look a lot better, Valerie said. It must be 4 o'clock, Max said then. Better get the chocolate ready so it'll have time to harden. Valerie took the lump with her and started down the ladder to the kitchen. You never did a better job. Smile. It'll work without a hitch, Inigo said. Max nodded very firmly, but he did not smile. There was something in the back of his mind bothering him. He never forgot things, not important things, and he didn't forget this either. He just didn't remember in time. At 4:45, Prince Humperdinck summoned Yellen to his chambers. Yellen came in immediately, though he dreaded what he knew about to happen. As a matter of fact, Yellen already had his resignation written and in an envelope in his pocket. Your Highness, Yellen began. Report, Prince Humperdinck said. He was dressed brilliantly in white, his wedding costume. He still looked like a mighty barrel, but brighter. All your wishes have been carried out, Highness. Personally, I have attended to each detail. He was very tired, Yellen was, and his nerves long past frayed. Specify, said the prince. He was 75 minutes away from his first female murder, and he wondered if he could get his fingers to her throat before even the start of a scream. He'd been practicing on giant sausages all the afternoon and had the movements down pretty pat, but then giant sausages weren't necks, and all the wishing in the world wouldn't make them so. All passages to the castle itself have been resealed this very morning, save the main gate. That is now the only way in and the only way out. I have changed the lock to the main gate. There is only one key to the new lock, and I keep it wherever I am. When I am outside with 100 troops, the key is in the outside lock, and no one can leave the castle from the inside. When I am with you, as I am now, the key is on the inside lock, and no one may enter from the outside. Follow, said the prince, and he moved to the large window of his chamber. He pointed outside. Below the window was a lovely painted garden. Beyond that, the prince's private stables. Beyond that, naturally, the outside castle wall. That is how they will come, he said. Over the wall, through my stables, past my garden, to my window, throttle the queen, and back the way they came before we know it. They, Yellen said, though he knew the answer. The Guelderians, of course. But the wall where you suggest is the highest wall surrounding all of Florin Castle. It is 50 feet high at that point, so that would seem the least likely point of attack. He was trying desperately to keep himself under control. All the more reason why they should choose this spot. Besides, the world knows the Guelderians are unsurpassed as climbers. Yellen had never heard that. He had always thought the Swiss were the ones who were unsurpassed as climbers. Highness, he said in one last attempt, I have not yet from a single spy heard a single word about a single plot against the princess. I have it on unimpeachable authority that there will be an attempt made to strangle the princess this very night. In that case, Yellen said, and he dropped to one knee and held out the envelope, I must resign. It was a difficult decision. The Yellens had headed enforcement in Florin for generations, and they took their work more than seriously. I am not doing a capable job, sire. Please forgive me and believe me when I say that my failures were those of the body and mind, not of the heart. Prince Humperdinck found himself quite suddenly in a genuine pickle. For once the war was finished, he needed someone to stay in Guilder and run it, since he couldn't be in two places at once, and the only men he trusted were Yellen and the Count would never take the job, being obsessed as he was these days with finishing his stupid machine. I do not accept your resignation. You are doing a capable job. There is no plot. I shall slaughter the queen myself this very evening. You shall run Guilder for me after the war. Now get back on your feet. Yellen didn't know what to say. Thank you seemed so inadequate, but it was all he could come up with. Once the wedding is done with, I shall send her here to make ready, while I shall, with boots carefully procured in advance, make tracks leading from the wall to the bedroom, and returning then from the bedroom to the wall. Since you are in charge of law enforcement, I expect it will not take you long to verify my fears that the prince could only be made by the boots of Guelderian soldiers. Once we have that, we need a royal proclamation or two. My father can resign as being unfit for battle, and you, dear Yellen, will soon be living in Guilder Castle. Yellen knew a dismissal speech when he heard one. I leave with no thought in my heart but to serve you." "Thank you," Humperdinck said, pleased because, after all, loyalty was one thing you couldn't buy. And in that mood, he said to Yellen by the door, "And, if you see the albino, tell him he may stand in the back for my wedding. It's quite all right with me." "I will, Highness," Yellen said, adding, "but I don't know where my cousin is. I went looking for him less than an hour ago, and he was nowhere to be found." Prince understood important news when he heard it, because he wasn't the greatest hunter in the world for nothing, and even more because if there was one thing you could say about the albino, it was that he was always to be found. "My God, you don't suppose there is a plot, do you? It's a perfect time. The country celebrates. If Gildo were about to be 500 years old, I know I'd attack them." "I will rush to the gate and fight to the death if necessary," Yellen said. "Good man," the prince called after him. If there was an attack, it would come at the busiest time, during the wedding, so he would have to move that up. State affairs went slowly, but still he had authority. 6 o'clock was out. He would be married no later than 5:30, or know the reason why. At 5 o'clock, Max and Valerie were in the basement sipping coffee. "You better get right to bed," Valerie said. "You look all troubled. You can't stay up all night as if you were a pup." "I'm not tired," Max said, "but you're right about the other." "Tell Mama," Valerie crossed to him, stroked where his hair had been. It's just I've been remembering about the pill." "It was a beautiful pill, honey. Feel proud." "I think I messed up the amounts, though. Didn't they want an hour? When I doubled the recipe, I didn't do enough. I don't think it'll work over 40 minutes. Valerie moved into his lap. "Let's be honest with each other. Sure, you're a genius, but even a genius gets rusty. You were 3 years out of practice. 40 minutes will be plenty." "I suppose you're right. Anyway, what can we do about it? Down is down." "The pressures you've been under. If it works at all, it'll be a miracle." Max had to agree with her. "A phantasmagoria," he nodded. The man in black was nearly stiff when Fezzik reached the wall. It was almost 5 o'clock, and Fezzik had been carrying the corpse the whole way from Miracle Max's, back street to back street, alleyway to alleyway, and it was one of the hardest things he had ever done. Not taxing, he wasn't even winded, but if the pill was just what it looked like, a chocolate lump, then he, Fezzik, was going to have a lifetime of bad dreams of bodies growing stiff between his fingers. When he at last was in the wall shadow, he said to Inigo, "What now?" "We've got to see if it's still safe. There might be a trap waiting." It was the same part of the wall that led shortly to the zoo, in the farther corner of the castle grounds. But if the albino's body had been discovered, then who knew what was waiting for them? "Should I go up then?" Fezzik asked. "We'll both do it. Lean him against the wall and help me." Fezzik tilted the man in black so he was in no danger of falling and waited while Inigo jumped onto his shoulders. Then Fezzik did the climbing. Any crack in the wall was enough for his fingers. The least imperfection was all he needed. He climbed quickly, familiar with it now, and after a moment, Inigo was able to grab hold of the top and say, "All right, go on back down now." So Fezzik returned to the man in black and waited. Inigo crept along the wall top in dead silence. Far across he could see the castle entrance and the armed soldiers flanking it. And closer at hand was the zoo. And off in the deepest brush in the farthest corner of the wall he could make out the still body of the albino. Nothing had changed at all. They were, at least so far, safe. He gestured down to Fezzik, who scissored the man in black between his legs and began the arm climb noiselessly. When they were all together on the wall top, Inigo stretched out the dead man and then hurried along until he could get a better view of the main gate. The walk from the outer wall to the main castle gate was slanted slightly down. Not much of an incline, but a steady one. There must be, Inigo did a quick count, at least 100 men standing at the ready. And the time must be, he estimated closely, 5 after 5 now, perhaps close to 10. 50 minutes till the wedding. Inigo turned then and hurried back to Fezzik. "I think we should give him the pill," he said. "It must be around 45 minutes until the ceremony." "That means he's only got 15 minutes to escape with," Fezzik said. "I think we should wait until at least 5:30. Half before, half after." "No," Inigo said. "We're going to stop the wedding before it happens. That's the best way, at least to my mind. Before they're all set, in the hustle and bustle beforehand, that's when we should strike." Fezzik had no further rebuttal. "Anyway, we don't know how long it takes to swallow something like this." "I could never get it down myself, I know that." "We'll have to force feed him," Inigo said, unwrapping the chocolate-colored lump. "Like a stuffed goose now. Put our hands around his neck and kind of push it down into whatever comes next." I'm with you, Inigo, Fezzik said. Just tell me what to do. Let's get him into a sitting position, I think, don't you? I always find it easier swallowing sitting up than lying down. We'll have to really work at it, Fezzik said. He's completely stiff by now. I don't think he'll bend easy at all. You can make him, Inigo said. I always have confidence in you, Fezzik. Thank you, Fezzik said. Just don't ever leave me alone. He pulled the corpse between them and tried to make him bend in half, but the man in black was so stiff, Fezzik really had to perspire to get him at right angles. How long do you think we'll have to wait before we know if it's the miracle or not? Your guess is as good as mine, Inigo said. Get his mouth as wide open as you can and tilt his head back a little and we'll just drop it in and see. Fezzik worked at the dead man's mouth a while, got it the way Inigo said, tilted the neck perfect the first time, and Inigo knelt directly above the cavity, dropped the pill down, and as it hit the throat he heard, Couldn't beat me alone, you dastards! Well, I'll beat you each apart! I'll beat you both together! You're alive! Fezzik cried.